In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please take your seats. How many of you watched the coronation service yesterday? And how many of you watched the preparations from 7 o'clock in the morning, was it? No, excellent. How many of you watching the news summaries at 10 o'clock in the evening? Oh, one or two diehards. Excellent. Well, we're at the morning after party and you're looking very fresh. So congratulations and welcome. And I don't know, we're probably mostly the generation here that we are reasonably favourably disposed to the idea of the monarchy, though we might have different views and opinions as to whether perhaps this should have been done this way or that should have been done the other. One of the things that I found fascinating, not that I'm a particular royalist nor indeed royal historian, is the change that has taken place in our country in the last 70 years when we laid Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth to rest. People were saying, what a different country it is that she is leaving when she leaves her post and leaves her life to the one that she was born into and the one in which she took up her responsibilities as our sovereign. And just in summary, I read somewhere that her coronation was very much about hierarchy, and Prince Charles's, it seems to me, was very much about community. And there are some that think he went too far in that direction. There are some that think perhaps we spent too much money on the ceremony. But I'm intrigued that our monarch is poorer than our Prime Minister. And given the excitement about whether we all want to say thank you to Charles, yes, we'll obey you, we'll follow you, we'll support you, many, I'm sure, did read the words in the service that said, yes, we will follow and obey you. You are our king. And we haven't had the chance, politics aside, because of the way our politics works, that the current administration, centrally, has been chosen largely by the political party that was put in power by those of us who voted for a personality, if not the content of a previous PM. And that's quite interesting, that we are supposed to be a parliamentary sovereign democracy. One of our leaders, the king, is a practicing Christian, the other is a practicing Hindu. We are in interesting times. There were representatives of all the main faiths and all the main versions of Christianity who said, we're really pleased that you are here and you are in your post and we will support you, even though I felt there was quite a distinction when Charles had to say, I'm a Protestant and I will uphold the Protestant idea of sovereignty in this country. So it was quite an interesting community event, I felt. I'm sure if there were any opportunities for him to introduce the environment to the ceremony, above and beyond what he did, he would have done too. He was talking about climate breakdown and the challenges that we are facing now, 50 or so years ago. And that there again, there is a dichotomy between our one leader in Buckhouse and our other leader down the road in Downing Street. And I'm not necessarily making any political comment up here, I'm just saying this is quite interesting to me, that we have, in broad terms, a more left-wing monarch than our Prime Minister, which is quite extraordinary, particularly as those of us who may put up a Union flag or a St George's flag because we feel that our king stands for all the British things that we feel in our right-wing approach to life the king stands for, actually probably he's less right-wing than our elected Prime Minister in many respects. Just look at the female black bishop, for instance, who was up at the front there, helping out with the Mass, the Holy Communion, the breaking of bread. So we are in, as we used to say during COVID, unprecedented times. And I'm certainly very happy to swear allegiance. One of the other things that I found fascinating about the ceremony was at one point he was standing there just in his naval trousers, apparently, and his shirt. About as naked as he could be, really, given how grand everybody else looked in their finery. And that just made me think, first of all, my goodness, how exposed he is, actually, how much he needs our prayers and support. You know, he's probably got the same sort of views as Chris Packham, for instance, who the hunting fraternity like to vilify and heap piles of dead foxes on his doorstep just to know how much they don't appreciate his views. He was standing there, our king, naked, and we kind of clothed him in that ancient ceremony because we are happy, broadly, as a nation, to have the idea of a monarch. Maybe some are more ambivalent, some more antagonistic, but I like Stephen Fry's idea that actually he is for everyone and not for anyone. And so to some extent he's sort of a backstop, he's a foil to sort of politics that runs alongside, and it has done throughout our heritage and our history. His nakedness was one thing, reminding me also of the nakedness of Jesus, but also our nakedness. And then the other thing was, yes, we were invited to swear allegiance to him, but God bless him, he swore allegiance to us. It wouldn't surprise me if he had tears in his eyes as he did so. I really feel that he understands that. You know, there are sort of swearing in ceremonies we see where certain nations of the world, the new person who's in charge just sort of stands there stony-faced and resolute. They don't really care necessarily about the people that they're called to represent and to care for and look after. They're just there because of the interests or the military power that is behind them. And as Liz said, and I'm sure we would appreciate, my wife Liz said, that look at that display of military power in our capital city. Yes, there were some firearms, which might not be everybody's cup of tea, but there were no ballistic missiles being paraded. There were no tanks. Outrageously, the most powerful weapon, perhaps apart from those firearms, were horses, for goodness sake. And the most offensive thing they were carrying was sort of tin whistles and flutes and drums. And those splendid people riding those beasts were able to bring them to line and to heel as they were spooked and freaked by people around and about. I don't know, but I suspect Charles would have quite been prepared to have people who disagreed with royalty and the monarchy for the sake of human rights and freedom of expression in those streets, even if, for the sake of the pageantry, it might have been better that they weren't allowed to interfere overly much. How many of you can remember all the things that were given to the king and then summarily removed? There was a ring. There was an orb. I'm expecting to shout out house any minute. Glove. There were 2 sceptres, a cross and a dove. I'm referring to some notes I made earlier here, so I'm cheating. Spurs and a crown. I think that's it. Ring, sword, orb, sceptre, cross and dove, glove, spurs and crown. One of the versions of bracelets, my glamorous assistant is doing sign language from the back. We were following on an excellent order of service that explained what the hell was going on. Most of us these days, sadly, don't have any experience of church. And so quite a lot of what was going on was explained in the right-hand side in a very balanced and non-patronising way. And for those of us that haven't attended the coronation recently, the idea that he was given some bracelets to touch and put away, and the slightly amusing way in which the ring was presented, these things were handed to him. He touched, he smiled, he put them back. He had to carry some things. He wore the glove for quite some time, and I expect on those little notes next to him he was being told whether he needed to kiss it, lift it up, put it down, wave at it, or whatever he had to do. But each of those things were explained in the notes. I think you can find them on the Church of England's website, but they are worth looking up. Ring, just as bishops wear rings, because it's a sign of ownership and responsibility. People who are married wear rings, if we are allowed to marry them in our churches. Sword. The sword, in terms of our monarch, isn't an offensive weapon. It gets to the heart of the matter. It demonstrates an earnestness and a keenness to stand up for rights. The orb is Christ's or God's rule in earth through him. It's a bit like a very glorious Christingle. The sceptre and the one with a cross and one with a dove, these are signs of power, temporal and spiritual. The glove, I was interested to read in the notes, I guess it comes from that idea of throwing down the gauntlet. It's to demonstrate the willingness to engage with the issues of our time. The spurs, likewise, getting ready to go into the heart of the battle in the days when kings would have led people to the front. Certain militaristic rulers today are nowhere to be seen in the countries that they are oppressing, or the peoples that they are oppressing. And then the crown, that extraordinary hat that carries with it so much pride, so much hatred, the history of our time of dispossession and of care and responsibility, depending on the views that one places on those different jewels and its heritage, all the monarchs, all our history that extraordinary lid has seen. And happily, he was able to walk carrying it on his head. I expect he'd been to finishing school in Switzerland for about 3 months so that he could walk about. I'm not sure how well it fitted, whether it was actually bolted on, but dear old Justin sort of screwed it on quite tightly, I think. And so those things, it might be worth us perhaps looking up if we're able to. I'm sure it'll be on Wikipedia ere long, and considering how we can engage with those ideas as community. And it's worth referring to our Bible readings. These are chosen, I guess, by the King in association with Justin to be in the service that we can use around the country today. Firstly, there is a great appreciation that God is involved with this stuff. It's a set of questions. Who measured the waters? I.e., why is it that oceans stop where they stop? Sea level rise and climate change permitting. Who has directed the Lord? Who did God ask about judgment and authority? Where do the nations figure in this great God, however we understand that, the above and beyond the unknowable? Spirituality, how do nations refer to and relate to faith? To whom will you compare me? Who is my equal? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He doesn't grow faint or grow weary. This is written to a people in exile who are longing for redemption and rescue, like those Ukrainians, the fortunate ones who have been able to find places to live in hotels, even if people outside tend to throw abuse at them when they see them at the windows. They long, some of them, to go home. Others long to stay and are forced to unstable nations in other parts of the world. But God's people in this reading were wanting redemption. And to encourage them, their people were explaining to them that it is our God, the givenness of the Jewish people is that they are God's people. The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. The God of the Jew does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. And those of us who are Gentiles can merely only cling to the garments. Some of the people in the service yesterday clung to the garments of the King. And we are only grafted in, adopted. Those who once far off have been brought near. But our God too, by adoption, is that same strong and powerful God who's above and beyond the little current sillinesses of our political systems, of those apparently all-powerful empires, those that they oppress and those that they serve. And our King knows that, it seems to me. And he honoured the nations of the world by inviting them, as they will be invited to the New Jerusalem, to his coronation service. And then the gospel reading. Very countercultural in our day. We, for the last few decades, have been told that everything is down to us. We think of ourselves as the individual first and foremost. If we are asked, who are you? Or what do you do? We talk about ourselves. We don't say, well, I'm Welsh, or I live in Birmingham, or I follow Chelsea. We usually come to something that identifies as individuals first of all, rather than from the community we serve. That's quite unusual globally. Most people start off from the basis of the community that they are a part of. And I think that is something we have lost, which is why I'm very pleased that we have representatives of our wider community and politicians with us today helping support our worship. Many of us are involved with voluntary work that they support in and around the town. It is my hope that as our relations continue to improve, and there are many displays of flowers from our community here, would that those people who were behind their presentation were here with us too. I long for these town team services to grow. I would love to have police officers. I would love to have paramedics. I would love to have people from the schools taking part in our worship. So if you can help us, I will help you to head in that direction. It seems to me that the more we recognise that we are here to serve, just as we agreed to serve the King and the King agreed to serve us, the better and stronger our community will be. We might think that we are stronger if we know what we believe in and we only read and engage with things that support our view. But that is a broad way, an easy way that leads to hell. It is a much more straightforward, much more difficult, much less straightforward, but a much, I would argue, stronger approach. If I recognise that my view is one of many, and that I engage with a community, with people that I disagree with people whose culture I don't understand, whose music grates in my ear, but have the skills and talents, perhaps, that I or the nation I'm a part of does not. We have a role and a job, I would suggest, as we serve our King, to be as inclusive as he is, to care for the excluded as he does, look at his charitable work, and to care for the environment as he does, whatever our political affiliations may be. And I would encourage you to look for the content and not the personality as you engage with political leadership. And what is it that we actually want to be as a community? And to consider the other option. We're thinking about restoration, recreation in this building, putting in loose toilets and kitchens. And there are one or two different views as to where those things should go. We're in agreement that we need them, but where they should go. The Church Council, and if you'd like to get involved with that, do get in touch. The Church Council will make the final decision, but we've got a steering group made up of some people from the council and other local professionals who are putting their pennyworth in. But my view is that we should present the options. Do we have a digital instrument? Do we restore this one? Do we have the toilets and kitchens in that corner or that corner? Do we allow Carolyn out of that corner and put her somewhere slightly sunnier and warm and accessible? Carolyn is our administrator for the team, but we host her here at St Mary's Halesworth. It seems to me that we gain strength in community when we are open to the view, our opinion may not be the best or the right. And I believe that as church we can do that. Our church has stood, this church here, and the worship that took place on this site before the church was built, like the old oak out at Heveningham, has seen a change in politics, of view and of opinion, even greater and over an even longer time scale than the reign of Queen Elizabeth and the changes between her coronation and Prince Charles's. So let us learn how to serve each other, our community, and support and encourage those that our King would support and encourage as we stand with him for good economic practice, good environmental practice, and good social practice. Amen.